Well, every other week we've been hearing from different people in the congregation and different testimonies, and so tonight I'm going to be sharing my testimony. And I grew up in Gurnee, Illinois, and I was a pastor's kid. And it's interesting, I actually, even though I was a pastor's kid, I had no interest in going to church whatsoever. Oftentimes I was forced to go to church. And by the time youth group came, I was actually forced to go to youth group. And usually what would happen is I'd hear a sermon or I'd read the Bible, and then it would just go in one ear, out the other. And I just had no interest. And I remember being an elementary student, dead in my sin. And I remember literally 5th and 6th grade, my sin was my favorite part of my life. And I had prayed the prayer when I was about 6, but there was really no change that had happened for me. And then there was a retreat that was October 6, 2007. I was in 7th grade, and my parents were like, "Hey, John, we're going to ask you to go on this retreat." And I was like, "Okay, fine, if I have to," not knowing that would be the retreat that I was completely changed. And I can't even describe what happened, but there's this famous sermon jam called "That's My King" by S.M. Lockrid. And basically, he just goes through attributes of Jesus, sharing about who Jesus is. And he kept saying, "That's my King. Do you know him?" And I didn't know him. Even though I grew up in the church, I had no idea who Jesus was. And at some point during that sermon jam, I was born again. And I can't even describe what happened, but I went from having no interest in God to my desires changing. And it was the first aha moment. And I went, I get it. God is amazing. And that was kind of the turning point for myself. And then I began to see different fruits in my life grow after that. And I found myself in study hall for the first time in 9th grade at Warren Township High School. And it was almost like the Bible, which I found no interest in, it was like the Bible became a magnet. And I would be opening it up in study hall. And I remember one time in 9th grade I was reading it, and I was reading through David and Goliath, and it said David cut Goliath's head off. And I'm like, I don't remember that in VeggieTales, And there were just all these truths that I was seeing in the Word for the first time in my life. And there was another study hall. It took me 2 sittings to read the entire book of Revelation. Like, I was just so interested in what I was reading throughout the Bible. And then fast forward a couple years later, 11th grade came, and around 10th and 11th grade, I actually felt called to ministry while on a mission trip to India. And so I actually didn't feel called to ministry in America. That's why one of the reasons when Scotty started coming, him and I bonded so much over India, is because I actually felt called to ministry in 2010 in India. I was invited to share my testimony, and I said no. And the person was like, "Hey, you don't have to, but we would love to encourage you to share your testimony." I was like, "Okay, fine." So I shared my testimony, and God moved in power, and that was the event that helped me desire to be in ministry. And I was a youth pastor for about 6 years, and if I had to describe it, my main tagline for a youth pastor was I wanted to help bored churchgoers get born again. Because that was me. I was a bored churchgoer that had no interest in God whatsoever, and that was my desire for students to have that born-again experience like I did. And fast forward, I was working in ministry, and that's actually where Gretchen and I got to know each other. I was the youth pastor, and she was one of the leaders, and as we got to know each other, I was like, this would be kind of cool. And, and I was like, well, if I ask her and she says no, well, then that's going to be kind of awkward, so I just didn't say anything. And so I just kind of waited for a while until I actually put a pause on youth ministry to finish seminary, to finish my master's, and I was like, wait, now I can ask her. And so I went and asked her January of 2020, and so all of our relationship happened during 2020. And we started dating January 28th, and by COVID, March 13th, we had gone on 28 dates. We're like, this is going great! And so that was when we realized, okay, like things are going great. And so we started dating in January, got engaged in May, and then got married in August. And so we had a COVID wedding, and we had Kev and Nasha do our premarital counseling. And so it was just such an amazing, wonderful time. And then if I had to look at kind of the shift from youth ministry to adult ministry. What ended up happening was, I've shared this before on Sunday mornings. I felt a call when I went to a Cubs game, and I saw all of these people having a blast, and yet my concern for them was because of the Sermon on the Mount that says, broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be that find it. There was this concern that I had with all of these people at this Cubs game, and that was kind of the beginning of me desiring to share the gospel and realizing that the people that we minister to have eternal souls that will spend billions and billions of years somewhere. And that was kind of the catalyst that made me desire adult ministry. And then people like John Piper and different expositors of the Word, I began to get these times where I would get to preach to adults. And so it was so amazing as Father's Day of 2023, we had left youth ministry and we were trying to figure out what was next. And it was just an amazing moment where we started going. And as this residency program began, it was this thing that I felt called to adult ministry back in 2017. And so being able to have these opportunities and to preach the Word, it felt like it was just a thing of God because it was a desire that our family has been wanting for quite a long time. And so that's kind of how the residency program started and how we kind of long to be a part of that. And so it's been amazing as God has kind of worked in that as we've kind of desired adult ministry. So that's kind of from conversion to now. So thank you all so much, and we'll probably transition to some worship now. So.